The key to happiness is a choice. It's a choice. I think that people underestimate our ability to choose what we feel and how we approach life. Can you choose to be grateful? Can you choose to love? Can you choose to believe in yourself? Can you choose to be kind to yourself with that voice in your head?
Totally.
Can you choose the activities that are going to bring you more life? And ultimately, when it comes down to it, it's really choice.
Aubrey Marcus in the Cyber, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go. Okay, so we'll just start with just some chill questions. First one, what are your morning habits? What do you do?
I mean, I wrote a whole book on my morning and daily habits.
No shit,
Own
what's
the
it
day,
called?
Own the day, own your life.
Cool.
New York Times bestseller. No
Let's
big deal.
go,
No big deal.
NBD. So good.
And really, it's about three things. It's about hydration, light, and movement. So I have what's called a morning mineral cocktail.
Cool.
It's like 16 ounces of room temperature water with sea salt and lemon. And then I get a little bit of movement in, even if it's just some basic kind of moving around, shadow boxing, couple push-ups, couple air squats. Just enough to actually elevate and just move blood through my body and kind of signal to the circadian rhythm that I'm awake. And then try to get as much light as I can. So, get outside, let the sun, hit the back of my eyelids and the photoreceptors on my skin. And that sets the circadian rhythm in the right way.
Beautiful. Tell me about your bathroom habits real quick.
You're setting me up here because I only like toilets that wash my ass. I don't understand why toilet paper is always insufficient for getting the shit out.
It's literally disgusting.
It is.
You have a stank ass.
Ineffective.
100%.
It's so ineffective. I was always so jealous of I had partners and I'd call them the ghost shit, where they would take a shit and they would wipe and there'd be nothing there. And I'd be like, what? That has never happened to me in my life. I'm in there just laboring.
I know.
Just laboring. And it's like there's a brown highlighter and every time I go over it, the brown highlighter always has ink.
I know exactly what you mean.
So I got Toto's or Tushies, flat out.
Go.
Yeah.
Yes. What's your favorite snack?
I've figured out that basically all the foods that you really like that are not good for you, there's a good for you option. So there's good for you, better, or at least better for you potato chips that aren't fried. There's better for you all the keto, different types of candy bars and chocolate covered almonds from Lily's or there's pretty much a keto option for anything sweet, and there's pretty much a fried fat option for all of the savory things. So I just go to town.
Nice.
I mean, I give it hell in there.
And what's your exercise routine to get all svelte and shit?
I've trained pretty consistently for pretty much my whole life. I started off as a basketball player. Cool. Sport is still my favorite.
I know. I hear you're playing basketball tonight.
Yeah, we got a big basketball game. We got a strong rivalry amongst our squad, but it's beautiful because that's what I grew up with. My dad had a crew of men that would come over and play ball.
I love that.
And I would just watch them play and I'd watch them get heated and just really give it everything they got. So, and now I've created that same kind of group of guys that we get together. We ball, we play pickleball.
Competition.
We'll play volleyball, which is like volleyball on the indoor racquetball court. And then beyond that, obviously Onnit developed a whole series of kettlebells and steel maces and a lot of unconventional training. So and we have Onnit gym in town. So I'll go there and get some of the heavier lifting in. And it's just different types of martial arts. I've been doing a lot of kendo lately.
Cool.
Which is super fun.
Which is like
with the sword.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but my Japanese side's all samurai, so there's a sword in the family.
Let's go.
Yeah, so
Let's go.
There's actually a quest to find the sword because the sword's been lost.
you gotta recover the lost sword.
What's like a silly thing you like to do for fun?
Sex.
Yes.
Though it's not always silly.
Why do you think sex is so taboo still? People talk about it, they kind of get contracted about it. Like, what is it about that?
I mean, I think there was a lot of programming from
puritanical.
Yeah, religious,
America.
a lot of religious programming, and they found something that we could continually be guilty about because our sex drive is inexorable.
Right.
And so if they made us guilty about it, and then they provided the solution where you had to confess and you had to be liberated from it, they had a hook in to control people.
Right.
And so, I think we see this in all forms of empire, whether it's religious empire or corporate empire. They'll use whatever tactics they can to manipulate you to get what they want.
Yeah.
And I really think that's where it ultimately came from. And unfortunately, I think that's what causes a lot of the abuse as well, because the more you keep something in the shadow, the more it festers and contorts and metastasizes into something else. Whereas if we liberated actually the dignity of our desire, then I think we could bring sex out of the shadow and actually handle the violations and predations and issues that are there. But as long as it's taboo and nobody's talking about it, there's a constant problem.
What's your take on money?
Money is energy. It's like how full is your battery in your phone? Like how much energy do you have to do what you need to do? So I think a lot of people assign a kind of negativity to money, and I radically disagree. I think if people can trust themselves, then money just gives them more energy to do what they want to do. So money can give you power, but it's not going to corrupt you. It will just expose whatever corruptions you have.
Yeah.
So, I think money is actually fully neutral. It's just actually an amplifier of your nature.
Did you grow up with money?
Well, my father was wealthy.
Yeah.
So my father was a commodities trader, one of the pioneers.
Wow.
And he made his own fortune. He had a $30,000 commodities account that he turned into $40 million. And
Wow.
He's got books written about him. And so he was a kind of his own self-made fortune.
Entrepreneur.
And the beautiful part about it was not just that he had money, it was that he believed that he could always make it. And so he instilled that idea that, no matter where you start from, you can make your own fortune. And I was fortunate enough to be able to follow in his footsteps. Took $110,000 of investment and created Onnit. Just with that, we never had a Series A, never raised any other money, and ended up selling that for, $350 million.
Come on.
Yeah.
With $110,000 investment, what would you say attributes to the rise of it?
We had the right idea in the right timing, and I had the right partner. Joe Rogan and I were friends, and the company came about when I asked him what supplement he would like to take the most, and he said he'd like to take a nootropic.
Cool.
And I said, I'm going to make the best one that's ever been made, and I was successful, and we just talked about it honestly, and it really blew up. And we had our speed bumps and we had our challenges, but ultimately we had the right idea at the right time with the right people, and it was always just basically a handshake deal with Joe, from the start.
Did you always know? Wow. Did you always know you were gonna make money?
I doubted it at a certain point. I was 30 and I had a little marketing company, and I felt like I was floundering, and everything I'd tried had failed so far. So there was a period of despair and doubt.
Yeah.
But I never stopped trying. I never gave up. I never quit.
Beautiful.
And then when Onnit started to succeed, there was this oh my God, is this real? How am I going to fuck this up? What's going to happen? So I didn't actually get to enjoy the ride up because I was so worried about what was going to take it out. And I think that's, but ultimately there was a lot of faith. And if people ask me, could you ever imagine that Onnit would be what it was? I always answer, of course. If I couldn't imagine it, it wouldn't have happened.
Right, of course.
So. But I feel very, very, very blessed.
And what did you do? What would you say? Okay, wow, it was a huge exit. It's like a dream for most entrepreneurs, for every entrepreneur. How do you think about what you're going to do with that, all of that energy? How do you know? Because it's a real thing. It's a dilemma because you go from hand to mouth almost. To all of a sudden, you actually have to learn how to have wealth or how to have energy like that too. It's both ways. You have to learn. It's interesting.
Yep. And I definitely made a lot of mistakes. I was so wildly generous. I bought 5 houses for friends and, like the close,
Yeah.
and I donated, millions of dollars to charity. And then I put money in what I thought were safe vehicles that turned out to not be so safe. Now, of course, the economy was what it was at that point. And, but it's all good. There are lessons learned, and, I've had to go back, and if I get another big score like that, which I believe I will at some point in my life, I'll know how to do things a little bit more sensibly. But you're right, like you don't really know, but most of my mistakes were made on the side of generosity.
But you know what? That'll come back.
Yep.
1,000-fold. That's always beautiful. Yeah. I remember when I sold things, I called my mom and secretly got my dad's mortgage company, and then paid off their mortgage.
That's beautiful.
Which is it was such a, my dad came to America with $5 in his pocket from India.
Yep.
It was one of those stories. And, to have their children kind of have that moment was just
That's
exciting.
beautiful. Yeah.
Okay. What is the key to happiness from your perspective?
The key to happiness is a choice. It's a choice. I think that people underestimate our ability to choose what we feel and how we approach life. Can you choose to be grateful? Can you choose to love? Can you choose to believe in yourself? Can you choose to be kind to yourself with that voice in your head?
Totally.
Can you choose the activities that are going to bring you more life? And ultimately, when it comes down to it, it's really choice. And I love to double down on the fact that you get to choose your own emotions and choose your own stars. And that may mean making choices with your diet and your exercise and the inflammation patterns, because the body is related to your emotions as well. So bringing in a lot of energy and life force into your body, but those are choices also that you can make. So I really think that happiness is more of a choice than people acknowledge.
That's it. That's beautiful. That's right on. So people view you as a powerful person, you can tell when someone has power when they walk in a room. They have this presence and energy, and you definitely have that in spades, which is beautiful. What is your take on power?
Power is like money. It's ultimately neutral. It's about how much force and how much energy have you accumulated personally, inside your own being. And so how do you wield it? With great power, Uncle Ben from Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. And that's true, because if you're acting out of your shadow, or what I call your anti-you, that force of negation and resistance that steers us in negative directions, if you're acting out of that pattern, it's going to cause chaos and destruction around you. And it's going to cause a lot of hurt feelings and a lot of different painful situations. But if you hold that power with integrity, you can create a great amount of good in the world. So, I'm super bullish on accumulating as much power and resource as possible, because ultimately I trust myself. I've gone through and explored all the shadows, and, I know that there's the goodness and the badness inside of me, and I'm able to watch it, and I'm able to consistently, again, choose to hold all of the power and wealth and resource that I have with as much impeccability as possible.
And what about judgment? So when there's power and notoriety and success and this and that, and when we're put on a pedestal, there is this feeling of judgment, where we get judged. And I've experienced that on many levels. It's just shocking, and it's confusing, especially when you're why do you even care about me if you don't even know me? And why do you care to comment on me and what I'm doing when you have no context? And there's judgment. And again, we're feeling beings. I'm a deeply feeling being.
Right.
And, and I've never actually been bullied in high school or anything like that because of athlete. I'm scholar athlete, and I have twins, so no one messed with the twins, But I always had a buddy be like, "What'd you say to her?"
Yeah, totally. And so, you guys are fierce.
Yeah. So even if we're tiny, we're
mighty.
So what would you say on that when you're receiving, judgment or all that? How do you manage that?
So the first time I got a bit of notoriety was when I first went on Rogan's podcast, and we started talking about Onnit and my ayahuasca journeys, and I
Right.
got an enormous amount of hate, and it really shook me.
Yeah.
You know, like really, really shook me.
The first
for a
time always
while.
shakes you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it took a lot of recalibration to understand, because it was unjust and people were making stuff up about me.
Totally.
Someone, you know, they would make whole websites and then submit my former companies to watchdog sites and make up lies about, just to try and tear me down. So
Confusing.
it was very confusing. And the fact that people would, out of malice, try to actually lie about you to
Right.
tear you down.
Yeah.
I didn't understand malice in that way.
I experienced that too.
And so, you know, I think there's different levels. There's the level of, okay, this is someone just in their jealousy or in their
Yeah.
envy, and they have to tear down their ideal because their ideal is a glaring reminder of who they could be.
The murder of Eros.
Yeah,
Right? Murder of life force energy.
yep. And, you know, the murder of, it's also called in some literature, I think maybe Wilhelm Reich.
Wilhelm Reich, yeah,
Yeah,
murder
the
of
murder
Eros.
of Christ, or
Yeah.
the murder of Eros. And
Yeah.
and ultimately that's a factor. And then there's when that actually compounds into bitterness,
Yeah.
then you can see malice that'll come out.
Right.
Where people will literally do anything
Right.
to tear you down. And
Why do you think that is?
this is the story of Cain and Abel from the Bible, right? Like Cain and Abel, two brothers. Now Abel gave first-rate sacrifices to God, and his life prospered and thrived. His flock was thriving, his wives were thriving, his everything was thriving. Cain gave second-rate sacrifices, meaning he didn't put in his best and give it to the highest. So he was not thriving. And so his bitterness and envy and jealousy compounded. And so what did he do? He murdered the ideal, so there wouldn't be a reminder of who he could be.
Wow.
Because that reminder of who he could possibly be if he gave it everything was too much to bear. So if he murdered his ideal, then he wouldn't have to deal with this reminder. So I think it's a lot about murdering the ideal so people don't have to face who they could become, which is based, you know, a lot of the guilt and the shame they feel for not reaching their potential.
And fear of even going for it. 'Cause
Sure.
if it doesn't work, then they even are even more ashamed.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Love. I know, and we'll talk more about love in the studio. But what is your take on love? You've had so many diverse experiences around love, and I love that you're experimenter in love and sex and the world, just all the different modalities, because, you know, again, it's all made up. Like we have to remember, like, monogamy is a made up construct. Every construct, literally, these roads are made up, taxes are made up, the borders are made up, everything, money's made up, time is made up. So from that lens, like, love could be anything you paint it to be, and, you know, fuck the judgment or whatever the, you know, the world says. Like, what, based on all of your diverse experiences, like, what have you landed on as sort of like the morsel around love?
Love is like the sun. Love is like the sun. It's always there. It's always warming you. There's never a point where the sun's energy doesn't touch you, even in the cold, the dark night, or in the Arctic. The reason why we're not in a frozen wasteland is because the sun has warmed the earth, even if it's on the other side of the planet. It's ubiquitous and everywhere, and sometimes it's shining on you and kissing your skin, and sometimes, you know, it's hidden and it's occluded by a cloud and you can't see it or feel it, but it's always there. And another thing about the sun is it doesn't choose, okay, I'm gonna shine on this flower, but not this flower. It's unconditional.
Right.
It shines on everything. It shines on the angels and shines on the demons. It shines universally. So that's my fundamental understanding of love, is the metaphor of the sun. And so in relationship, that's where I've experimented beyond the conventional bounds of monogamy, because I've recognized the spiritual truth about love, which is that it doesn't make sense to say, okay, if your sun, your love, the sun that's within your own divine heart, that sun can only be directed at me. Well, that doesn't make any sense.
Right.
You know, like, you can't do, you know, it doesn't fundamentally make sense. And also, you know, a mother who has their second child, does anybody ask the mom, how does it feel to love your first child half as much?
Right.
Nobody says that.
Right.
You know, so ultimately there's an abundance of love. And so from that kind of fundamental philosophical principle, I've experimented beyond the bounds of conventional monogamy. And it's challenging because you're going up against a lot of constructs.
Yeah.
And but ultimately it feels more like I'm stepping into the divine nature of love, and just have to confront all your own demons, your jealousy, your possessiveness, all of that.
What about like the practicality of love? Like, because obviously love as a concept in and of itself feels like, like that is unlimited capacity. It's another energy form. It's abundant in every way. But what about the logistics of love? Like, I guess relationship and love are two different things, right? Like, what's your take on that? Because it's something that I think a lot of people are always trying to figure out. Like, when there's a logisticking of love that could kind of thwart the love that's there, how do you manage that? How does one manage that?
Well, there's partnership agreements. And I think really we should start looking at partnership agreements like you look at company agreements. If you have a partner in a business, you define what the roles are, and you try to create a reciprocal situation, especially if you're even partners in a business. So if you're going 50-50 in a business, you're going to expect that there's a reciprocity and an evenness with the amount of contribution that somebody's making.
Yeah.
And so that's the role mate level of a relationship. And then there's the soulmate level of a relationship. And the soulmate level is you see another person, you see all of their shadows, you see all of their brilliance, and you allow them to see you deeply. It's the deepest level of intimacy. And that's the soulmate connection. And then the wholemate connection, so these are the three levels. The wholemate connection is where you, instead of just looking deeply into each other's eyes, you actually hold each other's hands and face a shared horizon. What are we doing together?
Right.
How are we changing the world together?
Yes.
And so it's really all three different levels that need to be aligned for that relationship structure to work and thrive.
Yeah, I think that's totally right on. And roles are like define roles within the relationship, almost to maintain polarity or to like.
Yeah, so I mean, it could be, so there's who's providing the bulk of the resources for the relationship. Okay, well, it's like a hunter-gatherer. All right, you're gonna go get the meat. You know, I'm gonna go get the berries, I'll cook it, and I'll take care of
take care of the home.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's always gonna be a division of labor and a division of expertise.
Yeah. Beautiful.
And even there's certain emotional roles that somebody could play. You know, somebody could be the more stable, fundamental, like the mountain energy, which is classically a more masculine type of archetype, but both men and women can embody that, which is like, I'm gonna be solid and I'm gonna allow you to step into your wild chaos and experience and feel whatever, but I'll hold it down. And then you can switch that and like, you hold it down, I'm going wild. You know, and so you can pass roles between each other, but there's the emotional, financial, and then there's just the tasks that you have to, you know, accomplish. All right, I'm gonna go run this errand, you go run this errand.
I love the role mate, soulmate, wholemate. That's so good. And the wholemate is really like, like how are you arm in arm, like going towards something together? I love that. My whole dream is to be in like a pretzeled, but like with open ends. So you're still yourself, but you're together. You're on the ride together. I love that. Beautiful. Is that part of your training?
So this is a model that was passed to me and taught to me by Mark Gaffney, and it's coming out in a new book, and it's something that's been wildly helpful for me and Vailana, and just to understand the three different levels. So it's been a really helpful map.
Wow, that makes so much. And then they're broken down into each. Amazing. There's a book coming out.
Yeah, there's a book coming out.
What's it called?
The Future of a Relationship.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yes. That's great. I mean, Aubrey Marcus is a dear friend. I love that we're both in Austin, Texas together.
I love it too.
I love that we get to do this crazy, silly, goofy, magical, wild, creative life together.
Agreed.
And we're now going to have another conversation. But
let's go.
This has been a beautiful ride. What do you think of the Cybertruck?
I love it.
It's kind of a vibe,
awesome.
right?
Yeah, expect no less.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.